So we want to pursue our vision. That's looking ahead. We will continue to drive our vision and execute as well as we can. We think we're well set up to execute. We will continue to deliver on fundamentals. We will and want to grow our shareholder base, the share price and the market cap, as we have done historically until now. We will make a deal with Pharma. We don't know exactly when. I think it will be this year. That's it. Stay on the journey. Cereno's fit with this. First in class. Significant patient value. Disease modification. Small molecule. CS1 and CS014 are both small molecules. Clinical late stage. Both will soon be in phase 2. One is in phase 2B. Repeatable biology. Multiple indications possible to expand to. Yes. Now, if you are in this space, PAH, there's a big ticket deal potential here. The last one that was done with Merck was, I mentioned 11 billion. They bought the whole company, but the majority of the company's value was in sotatercept. So there is an analyst estimate on Cereno's deal value here. So you heard the 2.83 billion penetration, that's sales. This is deal value. Expected deal value on a successful 2B trial is around $2 billion. That's 20 billion Swedish. That would be nice for investors and owners. So that's the market is expected to be at 13 billion annually sales. So 130 billion Swedish per year. And we believe that we will take a sizable portion of that market. Right. And that would correspond to, for a Cereno, around $3 billion US dollars sales per year. So that is a breakthrough therapy, and that's, from my opinion, potentially conservative, because we are developing a drug that looks to be the safest and best tolerated drug on the PAH market. That's going to be oral, and combinable with the other products. So it's added therapy on top of what's there already. Ideally, if it's successful now confirming disease modification, you'd like to get it at diagnosis.
Yeah.
If it's safe and well tolerated, as this drug seems to be, you'd like to get it early. You want to slow down, halt the progression. And you can have, to get the pressure down immediately, you can get a vasodilator. You might also want to have the sotatercept there, and then you add this drug as early as you can. So on the whole $13 billion market, when we would enter approximately, the growth is a big opportunity for this drug. But normally, the current practice is that you start at the most severe patient group. That's where you document your efficacy and your phase 2B and 3 trials. And that's how it's been done with Winrevair, sotatercept. That's how we are doing it now. So class 2 and 3, functional heart. And then successful there, you move backwards in your trials, and this is normally done when you have the first one approved or started in parallel with the phase 3.
So how much of that?
We really need a true disease-modifying drug, because as we heard today, the drugs are not true modifying drugs. So whenever I hear about a new company, I hear about a new pathway, and I hear the words disease modifying, I get very excited. And all the patients get very excited, because then there is a potential that maybe you can have a drug that can reverse all the things that's happened inside your lungs. And as Professor Umbel talked about, there are different types of PH. And you have this type of PH where you have a lung disease, and they have no drugs. So when I talked about this 2.8 years, it's even worse for them. and this is a large group of people. So if you have a company with a drug for these kind of people, you have a big market.
Sharing what it is, I think Mark Humbert shared it. You know, there is an unmet need, a really high unmet need there. Fill that need.
Yeah.
So, you know, are you able to do it? Well, currently the signals that we see and all the basic science around HDAC inhibition and epigenetic modulation that's published all over the place at the moment are you know, enforcing that we'll be able to do that. So, but then, you know, you have to deliver the data, and somewhere between strong signals and confirmatory data, you know, a deal is made. So yeah, it's not hard to discuss these things. Deals are many times not made for those reasons. They're made at a certain time. And that doesn't always have to do with the value you have and the value you can deliver. It can just be the essence of time and priorities at various companies at the moment. So Cereno is focused on just delivering an increasing value proposition for partners, and we will attract a deal sooner or a little later than tomorrow. And I can say, you know, just to be frank, I think we'll do a deal this year. You know, so it will be a local deal, regional deal, or a global deal. That's my opinion, and I will. If we are in January next year, hasn't done a deal, fine. You know, we'll be very close to deal then. So the real essence here is: do you want to take the risk now, and you know, run with it, or do you want to wait until it's confirmatory? The risk is, depending on the price tag, is pretty low in this market. If you look at the current valuation and future valuation, analyst valuation and forward, Merck bought Acceleron for 11 billion 4 years ago.
Dollars.
So 80 billion Swedish, or well, it was 110 billion Swedish at that time. They valued sotatercept after phase 2B at 80 million Swedish, or $7 million at that time. Sotatercept is exceeding their expectations at the moment. And you heard Mark Humbert, that additional therapies are needed, disease modifiers. And, you know, so if we can deliver, we have delivered so far as you know, I think more than expected last year. And we have now the setup for delivery on all aspects, I think. So the next thing is, when will the deal happen? Will it happen on this setup, or will it happen when the data is done?
Yeah.
That's my, you know. I think it will happen before, but
I mean, it's interesting.
Cereno has been able to attract some of the best minds on the planet in relation to cardiovascular diseases and pulmonary diseases. And these listed here are on our scientific advisory board. And I won't go into the names necessarily. I can mention Deepak Bath is running Mount Sinai Hospital, 8 hospitals in New York. He has 270 cardiologists reporting to him on all cardiovascular business. He's also the editor of the Bible for cardiologists, the Brownwald book.
So, the clinical steering committee is led by Professor Humbert. Mike had briefly introduced him. Past president for the ERS, chief editor of the European Respiratory Journal as well, that is the Blue Journal, where most of the major publications happen. He has over 1,100 publications. He's one of the most cited researchers, and still very much humble and modest, as you could see. And he has been the PI for several studies. He's the world-renowned leader. He's the author of the guidelines, not only of the European guidelines, but also the global ones. I still have a few more slides to show, though, Mike. Okay. And yeah, and Sandeep Saha is a rising star. He's also an author of American guidelines, and was also author on the Lancet paper that I just showed you on the last slide. So both of them are authors. Besides these two very renowned researchers, we also have others who are well known, amongst others. So from Latin America, in Brazil, it's Professor Meyer, who is also on the guidelines of, again, the world guidelines for PAH, but also, of course, the Latin American ones. You'll be recognizing one Swedish name, Göran Radegran. He's the head of the Pulmonary Arterial Society in Sweden, is also author and co-author, I should say, of the European guidelines and a very active member. And as a fifth person, you'll have a recognized name here, Dr. Butt, who is one of the leading cardiologists in the world, one of the most recognized ones, most cited ones. So we are having a very distinguished steering committee who will help us guide in this trial.
Now,
with that,
there's a lot of attraction to Cereno for what we're doing because we're pioneers and people want to be part of a pioneering effort if it's a significant potential. So that's one. But we're not doing this alone. Last year, there were 37 to 50 publications, abstracts, review articles, etc., around HDAC and HDAC inhibition and the potential that this has for cardiovascular, pulmonary, and even other diseases. And you know, one of them here I just listed was in November, I think, in Nature. Nature is one of the best peer-reviewed scientific journals that we have. And also in Lancet, our scientific advisory board decided when we started to work with them that they wanted to produce a white paper, which means a paper to push the industry, clinicians, and the investors to invest in HDAC inhibition for new medicine. And that was published in the Lancet in 2021, partly by our scientific advisory board. Now, so we have the thought leaders. The science is moving even without Cereno, right? So and what's happening?
You mentioned, or Rahul also mentioned, conditional approvals and accelerated approvals, etc. And we've actually sort of seen this become almost a sort of a secret sauce for a lot of biotechs to be able to advance. I'm just sort of looking at what you've got there. What are how is the opportunity of a conditional approval or an accelerated approval? How might that sort of shape what you're going to do in your operations? So, Rahul, do you want to start with that?
Sure. Basically, what we have done is we have now designed the trial in the most robust fashion, but left sort of possibilities to look at the data without disturbing the credibility of the data and the quality of the data. This is a very fine line, and one should keep that in mind. We're talking about a rare disease, phase 2b, but we still, of course, we'll be getting impatient. Hey, what is it all about? What are the results? We want to see them as fast as possible. So we have built in a few sort of leverages where we hope that, for example, after the 9 months, the right heart catheter, when all the patients have it, we will be looking at that. That's a primary endpoint. Secondary endpoints are different. So we will be making sure that we have at the right predefined points an insight into those, and then of course we will share that because we'll analyze that at the fastest possible in the most compliant fashion, I should say. If the data is good, and we all are hoping for that, of course it doesn't happen every day, but still, if the data is compelling and great, then of course we will take all the routes that are possible to go to the authorities. The fast track, and that was something very important. We have a direct line with the FDA. We will be applying for something similar with EMA as well, so that if we have some things, we can always approach them and hopefully find, not shortcuts is maybe the wrong word, but still a direct line so that we can get that. Authorities are a first step, very important to get the approval. Of course, there are many other steps, but we will do our utmost to be as fast as possible with the results.
Bjorn.
I mean, conditional approval is something that the authorities would like to give to something that I think should come to the patient as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And what do they look at then? They look at safety and they look at efficacy. I think we have given what Raoul says about the study showing great efficacy or robust results for the primary endpoint, we have an additional advantage that could help us in that regard, in conditional approval. That is that we have the safety profile of this drug. We have 50 years of experience in the clinic. We have very good results in the population as such. That gives us an advantage that most new chemical entities don't have. So I think that could also increase the likelihood of be given a conditional approval. And if you don't know what conditional approval is that you get a approval to start to launch it to patients, given that you maybe add a study that comes later. So the condition is that you do another study, but you can already at an earlier stage go into patients so they can have the benefit of the drug.
Sten.
Yes, thank you both. And, of course, new chemical entities that have not been in man before for a certain disease, and any disease, have a higher rate of failure when they're exposed to a larger patient population. This is FDA's major concern. So if you have a phase 2b trial that is effective and it doesn't show serious safety or tolerance concerns, they still want to see the phase 3 in a larger population because it's a new chemical entity. In a majority, almost like all cases, that's what FDA wants. Their major concerns is safety for the patient. They don't want to let the drug out that can harm. So if you, as Björn say, you have a drug that already been for 60 years in man in much higher dosages, the safety concerns are much, much lower when you use it, even if it's for a new indication. If you don't see a lot of safety or tolerance issues in a phase 2b trial with placebo control, etc., over long term, which we are planning, the likelihood of FDA wanting to be involved in that discussion is higher than with any NCE. And if there is a dramatic effect on the efficacy, they might allow for conditional approval. So that would give, we would reach patients such as Hal or his other colleagues as patients much faster than have to wait for a phase 3 trial. Another point that I wanted to make is that a lot of investors like to a company to do intermittent reviews or analyze data and so on, and Raoul mentioned it before. And you know that the trials is 60 weeks. But you also know that the first treatment period was 9 months, 36 weeks. And that's where the analysis is going to be. So in a way, it's not an interim analysis. That's not what it's called. It's an analysis done after 9 months. So we don't have to wait 60 weeks for doing the analysis. We can do the analysis, and we will do the analysis then, and we will communicate around that analysis. And then as we do that analysis, the study is continuing into the latter part of the study where you switch the patient to placebo or active drug, and you complete the trial, and then you study that part. Yeah. So just to be clear about this, and I think it's important if you invest, how long time will it take till we get to the key milestones here? So please remember that. Yeah.